All right, welcome back to the Loopcast. Today, joined by Erica and Josh. And to all those who celebrate, happy St. Joseph Feast of St. Joseph the Worker. Out, commies for sure, but St. Joseph the Worker, understanding the dignity of work. There's a backstory to that, right? Like it was intentionally put out basically as a pushback on communism.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And speaking of communists, look what's going on at Columbia and all these other colleges.
That was slick.
Before we have to talk about the commies, St. Joseph the Worker, though, if you know the story, it was a pushback on communism, correct?
That's right. Pope Pius, the 12th, put in the feast day because communists around the world were celebrating May 1st, May Day, as an international celebration of communism. And so in his wisdom, the Pope said, let's talk about what true dignity of work is and how it's actually not, godless communism, but true dignity and being able to earn a living for your family and keep what you have and not have the government take everything you have, which is what communists do.
Sounds pretty chill to me.
Yeah.
But if we have to transition here, I don't even know if I can really call these commies because they're almost like cosplaying as communists. Maybe there's a few organizing, but as I mentioned in the title,
until they get power, until they get guns, dude.
I guess, but the protests just keep getting funnier and funnier. And there's one moment I think that's just a microcosm of the larger protests around the country. Obviously going back to Columbia where it kind of all started. Erica, a building was taken over?
Yeah, that's right. On Tuesday this week, students entered Hamilton Hall. Yes, Hamilton, as in Alexander Hamilton. Oof. So they enter Hamilton Hall. We think the numbers right now, we're getting about 60, possibly a few more, but we ended up with 60 arrests. But they enter Hamilton Hall. They barricade themselves inside. It's like the barricades in Les Mis. And they redub the building Hind Hall to honor of someone who's a young child sadly killed over in Israel and Palestine. So this is all going into the evening hours. The NYPD was actually allowed on campus. Columbia was like, okay, guys, come on in. NYPD comes in at 9:00 and clears it out over a 2-hour period. There's footage here that, it's kind of shocking. We see the students, they're smashing windows. They're hanging flags from the windows of the upper stories that say Intifada. They're declaring global Intifada, which for those of you who don't know, it's the lingo for basically global slaughter of all the of non-Muslims. So
it feels a little bit like an insurrection.
It felt like an insurrection.
Wait a minute.
The I word. Yeah.
I've heard of that before.
The I word.
Yeah. Well, this insurrection ended up, about 100 people in total were arrested, updated numbers there. And the police are still on campus. They're still at the hall leading up until graduation.
Notable, too, Columbia basically pushed off getting police involved for the longest possible period of time, right? Like this has been going on for like 2 weeks now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and then Congressman Jamal Bowman, he's from New York, he got all upset. He said, I am outraged by the level of police presence called upon nonviolent student protesters on Columbia and CCNY's campuses. As an educator who has firsthand experience with the over-policing of schools, this is personal to me. And so somebody said, hey, I got an idea. If you need someone to help evacuate a building, he's your man. That's the congressman who pulled the fire alarm at the U.S. Capitol. So
yeah, and of all the things to be objecting to, like we're watching footage right now for those of you on the YouTube, we're watching footage of kids throwing chairs through windows, and then you're like complaining about over policing. You're like, come on.
Well, the irony is rich too, because what were you going to say the same thing about U.S. citizens in the U.S. Capitol that they technically own? I mean, the whole thing is so ripe with hypocrisy. I saw AOC put out a tweet too. Columbia is responsible for if any of these students get injured, yada, yada, yada. As you see them all masked up, smashing windows. And not only that, but they were harassing kids inside the building. They went inside the building.
Kids. This made me mad. So one of the photos to go viral out of this episode on Tuesday night was one of the students, or I should say one of the protesters. We have to be really careful. We'll get into that in a minute. One of the protesters attacking one of the janitors. I mean, this guy, he probably makes, $19 an hour, whatever minimum wage is in New York. He cleans the building. He's, minority status. And you get these protesters attacking him physically.
Yeah. He's not the man.
He's not the man. And as always, it's the people who are not the man who are suffering at the hands of the man. And it's just pathetic.
So they're barricaded in there, and then the one student was upset because the police came by and they didn't let him out, right?
They locked them in. Yeah.
And the kid said, "Wait a minute, I got to get out of here. I got to get home. I have to study for my finals." Like, oh,
Should have thought of that
really?
earlier.
So,
Yeah.
so back to the Les Mis reference, they have a lot in common. They're all probably theater kids, right? There's no way these are like real protesters. So you had that, and you see the kids on the bus looking like, what just happened? And then my favorite moment from this, and I think we have the video potentially. The audio is going to be a little suspect, but basically, Revolution Master student, female comes out with a guy in a tube top behind her, bravely facing the press after taking over this building.
Oh,
And
she was in her element. She was the queen bee. She
has been
loving
training.
it.
She's
And
been preparing for this moment her whole
She
life.
was, yeah, she was
Oh,
ready.
yes.
Theater kids, she was prepared. And so she got in front and she said, we expect basic humanitarian aid. They should allow food in the building. And unfortunately, the protesters that took over the building made a strategic error. They did not take over a building with a dining hall. So
Right.
the hall that they were the hall they were illegally occupying didn't have food. And so they were saying that the university was responsible to feed them as they occupied illegally one of the buildings, harassing janitors, harassing students, all that. And when confronted with the fact, well, you took it over illegally, why do you expect there to be food? And we expect nothing less than what humanitarian aid would take place across the world. Would Columbia want to see its students starve and be dehydrated? And I saw a hilarious meme on this. It was just like picture of her, and then the text over it was, "Do you want us to die of dehydration?" Yeah. And I was just like, this is toddlers as soon as you try to put them down for bed.
I love that.
Oh my
They
gosh,
instantly
yeah.
become thirsty and they need the water. But it's all, and I mean, the tube top
And you're right.
behind her-
It's hard to show the clip as much, but like, I'd like to buy a beer to the reporter who asked this question. He's like, because they take over this building. And you're right. It doesn't have a dining hall. Then now they want the university to give them food, to cater
they're
to
paying
them.
for
To
a meal
literally,
plan.
it's
We
not like
want
they're
our meal
saying.
plan. Yeah.
Everyone has to understand here. They take over this building by force, and then it's not like they're trying to leave the building to go get food and come back. They're demanding the university deliver them food after they've
Right.
taken over a building.
Catering.
And so the reporter's like, "It seems like you're saying we want to be revolutionaries. We want to take over this building. Now, would you please bring us some food?" And I got to tell you something. That reporter deserves a beer. And I have to say, the reaction to this woman online, people are going bananas. Even moderates are like, "Dude, if I have to pay off this woman's student loans, I'm going to throw her into the sun." Other people are like, I'm ready to declare a civil war. This woman is so unbelievable. And the one person had this comment about this woman is amazing. He says that, with regards to some kids, like under the age of a certain age, that only they can hear certain screeches or whatever, and they're 12 or 10 or under, they can hear it. And no one, mom and dad, I didn't hear that. What? Everyone over 25 years old hears this woman speak and they lose their mind. Rightfully so. Righteous indignation. This woman is bananas.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and
Unbelievable.
before we go, so there's a lot of weird things about this. I've been seeing like the same exact brand tents pop up across campus. I've seen trackers of illegal migrants showing up in these campuses. There's interesting signals that are suggesting that it's not just students protesting. And we're seeing
Absolutely.
this in the arrest reports as well, are showing that people that are being arrested aren't even close to students. Like some of these are pretty old. So Erica, I mean, you did a little bit of digging. I think this is one of the most interesting parts of the story. These are a lot of theater kids potentially being animated by professional paid actors.
Absolutely. So, I mean, the girl that we were just talking about, who's a PhD in like Marxist poetry at Columbia, she's really a mouthpiece. That it seems that the backstory here is that we have the non-student or non-university affiliated protesters are the ones driving this. We have a story coming out from, again, Columbia, of an older woman named Lisa Fithian, who is a 63-year-old professional protest consultant. She's been arrested over 80 times. I think she's reliving her Vietnam protests when back in the 60s, the students took over the same hall, by the way. She probably was just like, guys, I took took over Hamilton Hall in
We can do it too.
63. It was great. Let's just do that again. And back they go. But not to make light of it, because again, it's really important to understand. And you'll see this in the way that the media is covering it. The more leftist mouthpiece, New York Times, they're covering this as student protest. And then, outlets like us and the Daily Signal, they're using the term protester, understanding that there's a distinction there. And again, more than half of students arrested so far at places like Columbia, UT Austin. There's other reports coming out of California. More than half of the arrests are of non-student, non-university affiliated actors. And that's really important to recognize here, that this is manufactured. This isn't some organic, high-minded idealist students.
Oh, totally.
This is very much a manufactured political stunt. And the question is, who's doing it?
And it's not even, protesters actually isn't the right word, and we need to change that. They're a mob. It's a mob.
Mm-hmm.
It's a violent mob. The thing is, and we can go back to the J6 thing. January 6th was a case where it was a protest that got out of hand, and it became a mob. This, on the other hand, that's how they intended it to be. They intended to take over these buildings and to smash in windows. Like, this is the modus operandi for the left-wing causes every time. They are using violence on purpose. And it's to me, absolutely hilarious. And I feel like the police should just, hey, back away. You know what? Universities, you're doing this yourselves. You're not going to enforce your rules. And, you've got security. What do you need us for? And I'd love to see all these colleges burn to the ground. They're absolutely eyesores. They're horrible, and they're a cancer on the American public. So I'd love for them all to go down in flames.
Yeah, and I don't know if you can pull up without audio, Jessica, but I saw this video that was captured on a drone of people training kids at UCLA to fight either counter-protesters or the police. And it's very clear in this video. They're around a circle. They have someone in the middle. They're showing them how to grab people's legs. They're showing them how to attack them up top. Like, this is why would this be happening at supposedly a protest, a peaceful protest? This is so obviously not. And UCLA has really descended into Lord of the Flies. Like, there's crazy videos of protesters fighting each other with no police involvement at all, no university involvement at all. They've just completely lost control of the situation on their campus. And to measure this as well, do I think that there's not injustices and evil being done in the Palestine-Israel conflict? No. I think there's absolutely, the loser of all of this are all the victims of war. I think
you always call me out, though, when I say that stuff, Tom. So let me call you out on that. Why do we have to make that apology? You're having violent mobs
Josh,
take over these campuses.
You might be missing my point here. Sorry. My point that I'm making with
this
is...
You get to do it, but I don't. Okay.
No, Josh, I like to give you that opportunity when I can. But the point I'm trying to make is, to Erica's point, this isn't really about principles. Right. Why were there no violent mobs over the Ukraine-Russia war? Why were there no violent mobs about the Armenian genocide going on in the Nagorno-Karabakh? There's the Chinese persecution of the Uyghurs. There's been plenty global injustice, genocide-level conflicts that we haven't seen an explosion like this across the country, across college campuses, that people have latched on and now become a mob, taking over buildings, attacking counter-protesters. It's not about... It's never about the specific process. It's all about the revolution. It's never about the issue. It's always about the revolution. That's how it feels. And the question is, who's fomenting the revolution? Who's behind agitating all these people?
I would say there's two reasons why this particular conflict is spurring such reactions, as opposed to the other examples you used, like Russia, Ukraine, or China. The most obvious one is the number one reason, is that they hate Israel for the same reason they hate the West. They don't like free speech. They don't like democracy. They don't like free markets. They prefer, the kind of socialist, communist, fascism regime where the government runs everything. And they love power. So they hate Israel for the same reason that they hate the Western civilization and they hate the United States. Now, I'm not coming to defense of Israel and everything they do. I really, frankly, don't care that much about it. But the reason they hate Israel is the same reason they hate the United States. And number two, most universities don't have, I mean, I keep reminding people, most universities are basically hedge funds that teach classes from time to time. They've got billions and billions and billions of dollars of endowments. I mean, Columbia, like they could, if they wanted to, Columbia could never charge tuition ever again. They literally could do that if they wanted to. Harvard, Yale, all these guys.
Their endowments are the size of most countries' GDPs.
Right.
It's
They're
absolutely
their own
insane.
little nation states, right?
Yeah.
And that's why actually Steve Bannon was like, we should start taxing these endowments. And I'm like, I don't have a problem with that. But
Instead, we'll tax unrealized
they've
gains.
they've got 30 or 40 billions of dollars, right? In this, and they have, what are they, they're not just keeping the, dollar bills all over the place. They're investing it, and they're investing into companies. And of course, there are going to be companies that are, in Israel. So that's why, because they're mutual funds, all these different stocks.
Which is the divestment demand.
Right. That's what the whole divestment thing is. These guys are saying, these mobs are saying, these universities should make sure that any investments they make in any mutual funds or whatever, they divest any stocks that are, an Israeli company. And you're like, really? Like, you're saying that a company is in Israel is therefore, agrees with everything that their government does? So it's kind of bizarre in that element anyway, but it's not like there's enough. I mean, so what would it be with Ukraine and Russia? I mean, how many mutual funds in the United States are investing in Russian companies? Probably not a ton. And so the divestment, there's less of an appeal there. Now, they frankly probably don't even know nor care about what the Chinese are doing to the Uyghurs, as you say, probably because they support the Chinese government. These protesters or mobs, they would love the Chinese government. That's the thing. People need to start to understand. We have members in both parties that don't have problems with the Chinese government because they kind of lust after the kind of power that the Chinese Communist Party has. The idea of the social credit score and that, the Chinese government can kind of like prevent you from, accessing society because you say bad things. Like, people in Washington are like,
That's a great idea.
that's a great idea. We should bring it here. Whereas most Americans hear about that and they're horrified.
On a pragmatic level, the economic relationship at a baseline is probably, like, even if they don't want to go that far. But
it's very hard to untwine from our economic arrangement with China. That's true.
To bring us up here, the favorite video that I've seen from this, and I actually strangely had kind of an emotional reaction to it. If you want to play it without video, there's a great picture.
Tom got a little choked up.
Got a little choked up.
Yep.
I never thought frat brothers would be saving America, but here we are. Yes, salmon shorts, polos. They were holding up the flag at Chapel Hill, UNC, University of North Carolina. And the audio is kind of rough for podcasts, so I'm not going to play it, but they're getting screamed at. Like, we have people calling them pigs. We have people throwing things at them. And these frat bros with pocket tees are just holding up this flag, not letting it touch the ground. They eventually get it raised all the way back up. As they're raising it, they're singing the national anthem, which I don't know. It's like you see this from the outside. Whose side do you want to be on here? Like, it's the frat bros. The frat bros are the ones singing the American national anthem, holding the flag up. It's like a modern, like, theater kid version of Iwo Jima. Like, I don't mean to say Iwo Jima because obviously there was actual war or whatever.
You know what? The boys in Iwo Jima would have loved to seen this, so it's going to be all right. Now, here's the thing about this. If you asked me, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, I've always said men and women got us into this problem, and men and women are going to get us out of it. But in general, if you kind of ask me, is it going to be virtuous women or virtuous men that are going to help lead the path? I would have always said virtuous women. I would have always said that. But then again, I see this clip of all these women and they're going crazy, at Columbia, and then I see the frat bros here. I'm like, oh, all right, Team White Chromosome, let's go.
That's right. Hey, behind every one of those frat bros standing there is a frat mom. So the women are there. We're just in the background.
Oh my gosh, yeah. But behind the frat bros are the sorority girls for sure.
They know what they're fighting for.
Yep. Hey, hands down. I love the frat bros.
Barbecue dads for the win. These guys are all going to be. We all know this.
Yep.
That's their future, and they're embracing it, and they're loving it.
Yeah, man, it's just so cool. Theater kid version of Iwo Jima is my new quote. But so we move on now. Very interesting AP article. The way that I was thinking of it is they're discovering American Orthodox Catholicism. It was similar, as I mentioned often, petri dish treatment a little bit, but I have to say,
Definitely.
not the worst coverage. And I think they
Not
actually
hostile.
not hostile, openly hostile. The language, of course, was very activist, but it seemed more like a curiosity of discovering basically the loop cast. Like if we were in these colleges, they would say the same things about us. So it's always interesting to see when the spotlight is shown on our people, basically.
Here's when the mainstream media discovers Catholicism.
Exactly. So very interesting profile, but the summary is that it is a profile on the transformation of the American church moving towards orthodoxy. And they follow two examples, major examples. One was St. Maria Goretti Parish near Madison, Wisconsin. Shout out to anyone in Wisconsin or Madison if you guys know this place. It essentially was their case study for when a parish moved from that kind of liberal 20-year period after post-Vatican II, maybe 30-year
20.
period, and started to shift more among a new bishop being instituted. And so for their examples they used was the hymn All Are Welcome was replaced with medieval style music. Sounds pretty sick so far.
Yes.
Sermons focusing on sin and confession. Radical.
They were very hung up on that sin and confession.
Yes. Priests now wore cassocks all the time, and altar girls were banned. So shocking to a casual observer from the outside. Why are we making these changes? Pretty obvious to people that maybe are in the loop or the loop cast. And then it also profiled Benedictine College in Kansas, which I've actually had the pleasure to speak to the president. My brother went there. I'm very familiar with it. But again, interesting to watch you get the petri dish treatment. So they were interested because amidst some shrinking in enrollment trend more broadly, they actually doubled enrollment in the last 20 years. So shout out to Benedictine College. The Catholic teaching on contraception can slip into lessons on Plato. No one is surprised if you volunteer for 3 a.m. prayers. I'm sure they're mentioning adoration there, but they're getting there. They're almost there. And pornography, premarital sex, and sunbathing in swimsuits are forbidden. I'm not sure about the swimsuits thing. That might have been a little bit of a stretch, but I know about the other two. And then so they got a quote from a student. It's a renewal of like some really, really good things that we might have lost. This was a 22-year-old senior biology major. So question then to jump off here as we see this, they said, for decades, many traditional Catholics have wondered if the church would and perhaps should shrink to a smaller but more faithful core. If the AP is discovering it, is this a big enough trend now that we can confidently say, yes, this is the direction of the church going forward?
Yeah, I think absolutely. This is the direction. It's where there's growth in the church. Something else that the article mentions about the St. Maria Goretti Parish is sometimes families will show up with 3, 4, even 5 children. I love that line. I'm like, and this like piggybacks right on the fertility birth rates that we were talking about last show, about how the people reproducing the next generation are the ones who are more Orthodox, more faithful. And then the article says, because they have embraced the church ban on contraception. And it is funny to watch the Petri dish, the poking around at us, because you start to see how from their point of view, all this language is very political. There's a ban on contraception. These things are forbidden. And it's a very legalistic analysis of how we live our lives as faithful Catholics. And they call us, of course, traditional Catholics. We're just Catholic, right? We're just doing our thing. But yeah, this is definitely the direction the church is going. Stephen White over at the Catholic Project out of, I believe they're affiliated with CUA. Yeah.
Right.
All right. So Stephen White, he said, this totally tracks with, and they actually cite their research on the priesthood and how younger priests are tracking more and more theologically orthodox and conservative. There's a really sad line in the piece as well where some 80-year-old priests or 70-year-old priest up in Madison is like, all these young guys are just waiting for us to die off. And that's a very bitter interpretation of what's going on. We want you to convert.
Repent and believe in the gospel.
Exactly. Repent and believe in the gospel is very different from we're waiting for you to die off so we can take over politically in the church.
But if that's what we have to do, we'll do it.
Exactly. Well, we're all going to die. We're all going to face the maker. And Stephen White points out, in addition to being theologically orthodox, the young cohort of priests are also much more politically moderate and ethnically diverse. So fancy that, all of these liberal talking points about diversity and multiracial color. It's just happening
No,
organically.
not like that. Not like that.
Not like, no, they're like, wait, we don't want that kind of diversity.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Whoa,
it's
whoa,
like
whoa.
it'd be fun to have just like a TV show with this old white dinosaur super liberal priest screaming at like a Latino conservative priest who's like,
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
want to face Jesus.
I actually noticed that too.
Why is it?
I noticed that too with Pope Francis appointments to across the globe. I think he started off with like, and I'm not gonna get Josh set off here, but McElroy, I know bothers you quite a bit. Supage, there's a couple of those selections that
Hold it
were
in,
very
Josh.
like, within liberal progressive Catholicism direction. But if you go more globally, I think in potentially an effort to be more diverse, he almost accidentally like elected people that are more Orthodox. And I think it actually probably is similar in America too, where yes, we embrace diversity, but if you're coming from Mexico, you probably have strong thoughts on, or if you come from Africa, you have strong thoughts on orthodoxy and dogma.
But
when it comes to
I'm
living.
going to go back
Morality.
to this AP story for a second, and I really want to commend, because what I feel like, yes, we're starting to see more conservative priests come through, and that's true from what Stephen White's group found, because like he did polling, they look at the polling like in the 70s, and it was like 2/3 of priests call themselves progressive, and now it's swung completely the other way, which is nice to see. I would like to say that's because of that has been primarily lay-led. Yes, inspired by Pope John Paul II, no question. But the fact is, I feel like it's education that has been such an integral part of it, and it's been Catholic families sacrificing to make it happen. So it is actually well placed for the AP to have done this story talking about the transformation of the church and all these young people who embrace the Catholic faith, to actually spotlight not just this parish in Madison, Wisconsin, but also Benedictine College, because Benedictine College as well is a great story, as your interview with President Minnis was so perfect about it, because he talked about how, 40, 50 years ago, that college had embraced, unfortunately, Land O'Lakes false sense of
the Notre Dame model,
academic freedom. And what they did is they went away from the Land O'Lakes and they embraced Pope John Paul II's the heart of the church, his teaching on the university, Ex Corde Ecclesia. And what happened at Benedictine College? An absolute transformation when they came back in line with church teaching and understood that faith and reason are compatible and they're not at war with each other. And this academic freedom ruse was just a way to jettison everything that made Catholic education distinct and interesting and good and beautiful and true. And Benedictine College had an amazing transformation since then. Their enrollment, since they embraced Ex Corde Ecclesia, has gone through the roof. And they're a success story. Whereas there are colleges, not just these crazy colleges like Columbia, which, NYU, Columbia, Harvard, they'll always be around, unfortunately. But there's actually liberal colleges across the country that are just, you don't hear about it, but their lights are going out because there's fewer and fewer.
Yes.
Colleges are being shut down.
100%.
And what is happening is we have these crown jewels in the church, like Benedictine College. Bless them for doing that. And also, I want to give a shout out to all the moms and dads out there that are homeschooling, and then also that are involved with distinct Catholic higher education, or K-12 education, that is staying true to that same Catholic identity, because it's making a difference. We had a report on this at In the Loop, and we saw Catholic schools in Florida now are bursting at the seams. And it's because they're remaining true to Catholic teaching. And also, by the way, we finally got more and more states to do what Florida is doing, where you can direct your dollars towards the school of your choice. And so now, because of school choice, we're seeing schools in Indiana and Florida blossoming and growing, and enrollment, and so many more students are getting access to better education. They're able to flee the sewer of public education and get better Catholic education. And those students are going to be a step ahead, and they're going to go to colleges like Benedictine College or University of Mary, and they're going to take off, and Franciscan and all these other places. But now I am in Michigan, and we do not have school choice in Michigan. And so I had a there's a 2 hours away from me, a Catholic high school just closed down in Manistee, and it's heartbreaking. And there's another school, we just wrote about this here in the Loop, down near Detroit,
JP Catholic,
and
Lincoln
that
Park,
one
Michigan.
is this close to being closed. We're going to find out very soon when that it's going to get closed. And so that's why my friends and I banded together here in my hometown in Petoskey, and we said, we got to do something unorthodox. We got to try to act like St. Peter and walk on water. We decided to lower tuition by 20%. That is crazy.
That is crazy.
Everyone's like, you're insane. That's not going to work. And we're like, you know what? Families are hurting. Working class families are hurting. They need help. They need this education now more than ever. All the porno stuff they're putting in schools, all the woke stuff, that BLM crap. We need Catholic education more than ever. So I applaud St. Michael Academy, St. Michael High School here in Michigan. We're making a difference. Pray for Catholic schools, especially the ones in states like Michigan where we got to work twice as hard because the government sucks up all the education dollars and
we got to
give it to anyone else.
We got to give a special shout out to JP Catholic, Lincoln Park, Michigan. We'll leave a link in the description. If you are in the Metro Detroit area, they are it's like a small amount of students away from being able to continue. And I think it's actually at an archdiocese level. They need them to hit a certain amount. So if you're looking for good, classical, faithful Catholic education in that area, you'd be interested in something like that, go check that out. We actually got to speak to someone from there, and we'd love to send as many people, because we do believe in that. I mean, it's not a joke. Like, Erica, you follow that model. Josh, you follow that model.
And
I
if
follow
you're
that
in
model.
Michigan,
100%.
Yeah. Well, Metro Detroit's a little far away from you, Josh, so that'd be quite a drive.
But we support Catholic education here. We're big fans.
100%.
And back to the article, and Erica, I want to talk, because you were on when we talked about this statistic that they continue to come back to, and we talk about this in almost everything we do. They said in 1970, more than half of America's Catholics said that they went to Mass at least once a week. By 2022, this had fallen to 17%, and among millennials, the number's at just 9%.
Yeah.
So they're saying that basically these Orthodox Catholics are having an outsized impact now, as opposed to maybe in the 70s, because there were more Catholics going to Mass in general. Even if that number's changed, but there's less that go to Mass now, the Orthodox ones are still going to Mass. So they have more influence.
It's what's the denominator here. So the population with more influence in the parishes, like they're seeing at Maria Goretti and like we're seeing in the priesthood. Yeah, there are a lot fewer priests, but the ones who are there and who are young and have a long ministry, God willing, ahead of them are more faithful. And I think this goes to your original question, Pogo, is this the future of the church? And it is. And I'll tell you why. Because in every age throughout the church, when the faith has been in decline, when there's been reform, right? When I said the Protestant rebellion, every time there has been renewal following decline, it is not about seizing political power and going top down. It's what Josh is talking about with education. It's about fidelity. It's not a political change. It is a return to faithfulness. And we know that what the AP is picking up on here is the future of the church in America. Will it be a smaller church like Pope? I'll say it's Saint Benedict XVI. It's coming. That was my prophet moment for the day. Yeah. Pope Benedict XVI, he told us, he said it's going to be a smaller but more faithful remnant of the church. And I don't want to get all remnant like QAnon crazy, but when we say remnant, we mean those who maintain the faith are the ones who have the future of the church. And it's the Holy Spirit, right? Which again, the AP did not pick up on, but maybe they will covering this story. Those authors will be like, I should look into this. That'd be great. Pull a Russell Brand on us. Love it.
Well, I like how they say like all these conservatives are taking over. It's like, you know what?
It's not about the power.
What did Woody Allen say? Showing up is 80% of life, people.
Exactly.
We're going to Mass and we're
Thank
there.
You, Woody
the
Allen.
other guys aren't there.
Yeah, another interesting Petri dish moment. They said, in some ways, that's how St. Maria Goretti looks today. The 6:30 a.m. Friday Mass is increasingly popular among young people, but once packed Sunday Masses now have empty pews. Donations are down, school enrollment plunges. Mm-hmm. So
it's because they're young. The people who are coming don't have money yet.
I see that. Like, I've experienced that. I think everyone that goes to Mass a lot experiences that. The push toward, I think even like liberal priests before would be like, why do I even have to say daily Mass? But now you get people who are like, I want to go before work. I want to go to a very faithful Catholic like Holy Liturgy. to go about my day. The idea of going to daily mass must be so shocking to a secular person, or even someone who's just kind of nominally Catholic. Like, why would I have to do that? But to someone that goes a lot, that Orthodox, conservative, like Catholic movement, that makes total sense. Like, that's just a reality that I think we all have experienced. And the best part was this final quote from the guy.
Yeah.
We were interviewing this guy at the church. Said, "How many have laughed at the church announcing that she was passé, that her days were over, and they would bury her? The church has buried every one of her undertakers."
Yeah.
I say we
That
end
was
on
a
that.
mic drop. Boom.
Church is undefeated on that.
I mean, maybe because the Holy Spirit created the church. Maybe, just maybe.
It is pretty mind-blowing to think about it as an institution. The Catholic Church is an institution, the longest running institution of all time. How could it possibly? We've had so many bad popes. We've had literal attempts on the life of Catholics in the church. I mean, it started off by trying to kill them off. 2,000 years later, it's like, come on, you're going to you don't think there's something there? Crazy talk. So now we go to the next article here. Shout out to Mary Margaret Olohan, one of our favorite reporters here at Catholic Vote. She dropped a bit of a bombshell at the Department of Justice. Now, you may know that Orthodox Catholics aren't a huge fan of the Department of Justice, as they've spied on Catholic churches, as they've put pro-lifers in jail. They haven't been too friendly to us with the FACE Act. So it's really relevant when you look at what's going on there. So, Erica, if you want to go through what that bombshell was, the Department of Justice.
Yeah, this was a big one. Mary Margaret, hats off to you. Assistant Attorney General Kristen Clark, who you might remember from our coverage of the Mark Houck case, she leads the DOJ's Civil Rights Division. She's one of Biden's first nominees. Very proud of her. She leads the crown jewel of the DOJ, first Black woman in that position. And the story broke last night that during her confirmation hearings, Clark answered no when she was asked by Tom Cotton if she'd been arrested or accused of a violent crime. But that wasn't exactly the whole truth. Yeah, in fact, it was just pretty much a lie. Yeah. So here are the receipts. Clark's ex-husband, this is actually a really sad story. His name's Reginald Avery. So Avery alleged to Tom Jones, who's with the American Accountability Foundation. In 2021, he sent a series of texts to Tom Jones saying that Kristen Clark, his wife at the time, had attacked him with a knife, deeply slicing his finger to the bone, July 4th, 2006, while they were still married. At the time, she was the head of the NAACP, so she was already a big player on the leftist causes. And Avery said one of the reasons was, I was seeing another woman, she was angry, attacked me with a knife. I mean, this is just like the stuff of soap operas. It's worse than a soap opera. He grabbed it. I'm not blameless. But according to messages and documents that MMO reviewed, and she has the screenshots, this isn't made up, police arrested Clark that night for violent assault. Just over a few months later, so we're talking like 6 months later, the state attorney entered a request of nolle prosequi, which is means just dismiss the charges. They were dismissed without a trial, and a year and a half later, Clark sought and was granted an order for expungement of all records pertaining to the incident. Then, of course, we come to her hearings in 2021. She's asked directly. And in addition to being asked directly by the Senate hearing committee, you also, when you're applying for these positions or you're nominated for these positions, you have to fill out confidential record indications. And MMO says that based on all the evidence, there was no disclosure of this at any level, whether it was confidential, whether it was to the hearing committee itself. And this is how it relates to us, right? We might say, well, okay, we know that there's thugs in the FBI. We know that there's crooks in the Biden administration. This is a woman who is at the highest levels of our law enforcement. She is responsible for FACE Act prosecutions, the prosecution of pro-lifers, Mark Houck being perhaps the most notorious or famous of them, but also we have the Tennessee Six who are still in jail awaiting sentencing, Lauren Handy, who discovered those 5 bodies of at-term babies who had been killed and aborted in D.C. That woman, Lauren Handy, she's still in jail awaiting sentencing. And also she's responsible for the complete failure to investigate the attacks on pro-life pregnancy centers and Catholic churches, which are now in over 400 since the George Floyd riots. This woman she has failed the public, she has failed the American people. And Mary Margaret is just showing her for who she is. So again, we've already seen fallout from this. Senator Mike Lee is calling for her removal from office, and we'll have to see where this goes, but we will be following it. And what a piece of work, Kristen Clark. We couldn't have seen this coming, though. This was the woman who, during the Kavanaugh hearings, was like, "Believe every woman. A vote for Kavanaugh is a vote for raping women." And she's saying she had a whole article in the Harvard Crimson. No, it gets better. In the Harvard Crimson, she had an entire piece when she was there for school about how blacks are superior to whites because if you have more melanin in your skin, you're just better at everything. Completely. I mean, hashtag follow the science. I'm telling you, she
wouldn't be a huge
couldn't have
fan
seen
of
this coming.
She wouldn't be a huge fan of the frat boys and white boy summer. I'd
Oh, she'd have something to say.
No, I don't think so. But like the difference between her and Kavanaugh is he was not arrested.
He was innocent.
And you were.
Oops.
The whole believe every woman thing didn't age too well, did it?
No, that did not age very well.
How could that possibly go wrong?
That was a strange moment in time. There was definitely some paid actors behind all that as well, I have to say.
Oh, man.
Well, I mean, it's nice to see that, Senator Lee is making the case like, we should probably have her resign from office. Like maybe she should not be heading up civil rights if she's, I don't know, been arrested.
If there's any shame left in the Biden administration, she'll be gone this afternoon.
There's not.
But I'm not holding my breath.
Shame and brain cells. I think they lack both.
I'm waiting for Mamala Kamala to come out and say, this is unfair persecution of black women.
Don't worry. Ins and outs this week will be very fun. Don't worry. There were some good interviews.
I have a feeling Kristen Clark will still be in when you film that segment, unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately. Okay.
We are ruled by unserious people.
Very true. Josh, Twilight Zone, you're up.
Well, I mean, I just think with Twilight Zone, I mean, you can't help but, again, my heart, I'm thinking about these protesters. I mean, this is, to me, it just cracks me up. Okay, so you have to remember the Biden administration has been working for months and months and years to what? To try to win votes by promising college students that and young people will get rid of your college debt, right? Like, and conservatives are mad. Like, oh my gosh, he's trying to buy votes. Like, yeah, that's what you. Yeah, I mean, yes, that's kind of what happens in politics. You try to win people on your team, and you try. I mean, I
that's
hate
democracy.
It's the way it is. So you would think these, young people who want to help Biden get rid of their student debt, they would be like helping grandmas cross the street or something like that, right? But instead, what are they doing? They're smashing windows, and they're like, no, we're not going to let Jewish people walk around on this campus. It's like, I mean, are you guys? And this is what it gets down to. People can be self-destructive, and they could do things that aren't even in their own interest. I mean, the fact is, this is crazy. These guys are blowing their chance at getting free college debt removed and gone. It's bewildering. And I think this is going to continue all summer. Like, hello, you think, I mean, the Democratic National Convention's coming up in Chicago, and what do you think that's going to be like? Do you think it's going to be a picnic? I don't think it is.
1968.
Yes, echoes of 1968, man. Democrats had that election. They should have won it. Republicans had been on their heels for a while, and Democrats, they had everything at their back. They had the win at their back, and they blew it. They had a summer of protests, and the convention was crazy, and Nixon was able to say, I think the silent majority is on my side. Well, the majority is also on the side of Israel on this one, and they're not, at least they're certainly not on the side of Hamas.
Josh, then question. If we think that actors are behind this, paid actors are behind this, what's the end game? If they're doing this at a time where it's very harmful to President Biden, he's the one suffering from this.
Well, again, this is the point I try to make it like everyone always, this is like one of the Mercer's maxims of politics, okay? Everybody assumes that their side is stupid and the other side is total geniuses and they always get things right and they're ruthless and they're smart and they always do things and we're just dumb on our side. Guess what? Both sides think that. Both sides think their side is dumb and the other one is super conniving and I listen to liberals and Democrats. They're always like, Mitch McConnell would walk on glass to get his things done. He's ruthless. He doesn't care.
I'm like,
And then you hear conservatives saying, "Oh my gosh, Pelosi
Cocaine
is
Mitch.
so cunning. She would do whatever it takes to get elected. She would, send her mom up the river." I mean, but here's an example where a political party could do something that's destructive and not smart. Like first of all, the fact that Barack Obama convinced Joe Biden to have Kamala Harris as his running mate, that was stupid, because now Joe Biden can't just retire because Kamala Harris is like politically toxic and you can't let her run. So they got to keep her. Well, whatever. Okay. And so again, these protests, like there are organized people on the coalition on the left side who hate Israel so much they can't even shut their mouth. They're so anti-Semitic and so anti-Israel that they can't help themselves. Like, yeah, let's take over this campus. Let's blow things up. Let's smash windows. And if they were smart, they would realize this is really going to upset voters and make people think we're crazy. So we should probably kind of roll this back a little bit. But they can't help themselves. So, sometimes political parties, they kind of pull apart at the seams sometimes. And you know what I got to say? Love it to see it. Let them fight.
This works.
When your opponent is self-destructing, don't interrupt them.
Don't interrupt. What is that? That's Art of War?
Yeah, dog.
We're going way back on that one. Good read. Erica, your Twilight Zone.
All right, I'm going to pull a pogo here. I have a fashion and a film. I have two pogo. And as the mom on the show, I'm going to go with a fashion.
I do have to say, from my own standpoint, I was never on any kind of fashion train. I was wearing these kind of shirts and khakis.
You were wearing mom jeans in the
not mom jeans.
You're a mom jeans guy.
I was a Jim Harbaugh impersonator, like when I was 20 years old. Okay, I was always wearing the khakis and like shirts like this. Okay.
Erica, do you know what's even funnier about this trend?
Yeah.
And this is something that I've talked to my wife about. Not only are mom jeans back, big jean skirts are back. Have you seen this?
Yeah, the big jean skirts.
Ankle-length jean skirts are back.
Yeah, the homeschool vibe. Your sneakers and your jeans.
I'm not exaggerating. Ankle-length jean skirts, and we're talking about cultural appropriation at the highest level because homeschoolers did it first. All right, way before everyone else. So I'm just waiting for.
I was down at the Yale protest, and the protesters are wearing long denim skirts. I'm like, excuse me, these are my people. That's my look. No, not just kidding. I've actually
the jean skirts are back, man. Look, you can say what you want. They're back. And then I'm just waiting for those jammers to come back. You know what I'm talking about? Like the patchwork jammers. Like every tween wore those at some point. For baggy cargo shirts might come back for guys. Cargo pants are back for guys. If you want to talk fashion, we can talk.
I mean, you want like everything like I would think right around 1991, 1992 was like the low point for fashion. Like music stunk. Fashion stunk.
Wait, what?
All of it was at its worst.
Wait, what period of time is this?
Like 1991, 92.
So you weren't like a grunge. You weren't like an alternative grunge guy.
It's right before grunge, yeah. I mean, because grunge, I guess, was mid-90s. All that stuff was just terrible.
What was Third Eye Blind? Was that like Third Eye Blind?
Third Eye Blind. Motorcycle Drive-By.
Oh, that's
favorite.
That's
Shout
a
out to John
masterpiece.
Carney, my fellow 3EB fan.
What? I love Third Eye Blind. I didn't know you were.
Yeah.
I was learning some of their songs on the guitar.
Yeah, but they're oldies for you, man. I was there.
People watching my New Year's resolution, yes, I've kept the guitar, and I'm proud of myself. That was 1997, so that was later 90s. In fairness,
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
So I don't know what was big.
You just said like the parachute pants. And
Hugo's Googling. He's Googling
top hits
images,
of 1991. Okay, Losing My Religion, REM.
Losing My Religion.
Yeah, meh.
Not a fan.
Nah.
Salt and Pepper.
Yeah, not exactly.
If you're into that.
See, I was still a Protestant homeschooler in 91, so I wasn't allowed to listen to this. I was wearing my denim skirt instead. It's all good.
I believe Hootie and the Blowfish were big at this time.
Oh
if
my
any
God.
Hootie fans. Smells Like Teen Spirit, Nirvana was big at this time.
Garbage.
Enter Sandman. Enter Sandman, pretty sick. Metallica.
I mean, it's all right. I mean, you can only do so much metal. I mean, but all the music was so bad. Like that's when I'm like, I'm done with this. I'm going to country, and I never really looked back. So I went to country.
You weren't a Boys II Men guy, Josh?
No.
I'm going to have to do this more often because I just set you guys off on a great riff, the fashion review from Erica, which is ironic. Anyone who
Fashion and
knows me
music review.
personally.
Please do. I love a good fashion talk.
All right. Okay. Sounds good. Okay. So my second part here, this is a little more serious. I wanted to look at a film Todd and I watched. It's like our first serious film since the baby was born. And I'd been wanting to watch Freud's Last Session. My husband was in a psychology department for a while. Got Anthony Hopkins and Matthew Good. Anthony Hopkins as Freud and Matthew Good as C.S. Lewis. And it's based on this play that was a two-man show that basically just was an opportunity to pit the ideas and arguments of Freud against C.S. Lewis. It's based on this, ahistorical sort of story that they may have met in the early days of World War II in London.
Yeah, what if they met, right?
It's apocryphal. What if they met? What would the conversation have looked like? And then it was made into this movie last year. It was kind of one of those like Academy Award danglies, like let's make a dark film with lots of gray, a little very Caravaggio light going on here. But Matthew Good, he was a little too easy on the eyes, I have to say, to play C.S. Lewis effectively. But Anthony Hopkins was a trip as Freud. He really stole the show, as it were. But in the end, I'm going to say, don't be suckered into watching it just because C.S. Lewis is in the headline. This was highly disappointing. And I think it ended up saying more about the filmmakers and their education than it did about the arguments of Freud and Lewis. We were very disappointed. There weren't really any opportunities for Lewis to present his arguments per se, which is what he was so good at. And Freud it just came down to this boiling of sharing their experiences as children and then giving the film over to Freud and being like, it's all in the journey and your father confusion and your mother complex and all that.
This is like everyone's attracted to their mom type.
Yeah, exactly. So it was typical Hollywood. They're trying to be deep and they just don't quite get there.
They just can't get there.
They just can't get there. And you're like, come on, guys, just read the arguments. That would have been dramatic enough. The closing line, I love this. Lewis goes, how mad, and this comes straight from the play, which is why it's actually a good line. Lewis says, how mad to think we could untangle the world's greatest mystery in 1 hour. And Freud responds, the only thing more mad is not to think of it at all. And my review is, at least they tried. But that's about all.
If you had to
like
give
the Bart
it,
Simpson cake. At least you tried.
Let's do it out of 4 stars, or out of 5 stars.
Out of 5 stars, 2.
2.
Yeah,
Ooh.
hands down. Yeah, not good. They slaughtered it. If you want to actually have a great stage play to read that's pitting these ideas against each other, check out The Unaborted Socrates by Peter Kreeft. That's where he takes out some of these thinkers and he puts them against each other on the page in a stage play format, and it's really excellent. It does not miss the mark. So
actually, I like his other book, also by Peter Kreeft.
Josh is a big Kreeft head.
Yep.
Yeah, Between Heaven and Hell, because that's where
the best one. Yeah, tell it. It's really good.
So the basis between the book Between Heaven and Hell is to take a kind of a historic coincidence, right? Mm-hmm. That on November 22nd, 1963, we all know as Americans that's the day John F. Kennedy was killed.
Right.
But it's also so happens to be the day that C.S. Lewis died. And it's also the day that Aldous Huxley died. And so Peter Kreeft said, now imagine this. Imagine a conversation between these 3 men on their way to the pearly gates. And that's the basis of this book.
It's fantastic.
You got Kennedy as the pragmatist, the American, whatever, and he's not really tied down by any, isms or whatever. And then you've got Aldous Huxley kind of portraying sort of like the Eastern philosophy a little bit, and he's the guy of the Brave New World. And then you have C.S. Lewis defending sort of the more orthodox Western Christianity view. And I think that book is a smash. I mean, it's just awesome. And so that would be a play. Can you imagine that as a play?
Oh,
That'd be awesome.
You could just stage that with some high school guys and just it would be so good for the kids. And
all the theater kids are burning down colleges right now. Who would act it?
Oh, darn it. Come on, theater kids.
So
back to
theater
the
kids
stage.
need to get back to the
Now
roots.
we need the Chesterton schools to do a play like that.
That's right. Come on, Chesterton schools.
The theater kids are, they're not a good place right now. Erica, question for you, is the best movie representation or Hollywood representation of a C.S. Lewis work Narnia?
Oh gosh. Yeah, the Narnia, the first Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe Narnia, I forget what year it was. That was pretty good. It was pretty good. I think the best representation of C.S. Lewis himself on film is the BBC's, I think it was 1990. They did a Shadowlands, and it's not the Shadowlands with Anthony Hopkins, which just I love, like, Anthony, come on, it's Hollywood Lewis, very, troubled, whereas the BBC version with Joss Ackland, that's the best, I think, dramatization of Lewis out there. So check out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Although
very
I have to
nice.
say,
Very early
nothing
90s.
has ever looked more delicious, especially as a kid, than Turkish delights. And
I know.
Seriously,
Have you ever
those-
tasted one though? They are
No.
such a letdown as a kid.
That's
You're
what
like,
that's what
Turkish
I've
delight?
heard,
Oh,
and that
it's
makes me
terrible.
sad because in the movie I'm like, this is like the apple. I'd imagine this is what he felt like. I'm like, these things look incredible, and this witch is offering to me, but I'm like, they look pretty good. So yeah, let down. And then my siblings and I would say Edmund, because everyone would always say Edmund to each other all the time. Also, if I move on now to my Twilight Zone, no, it's not my mom in the chat saying that she wants to wear the long denim skirt, but my dad gave it a hard no. And I believe that.
I'm
because
not
this
going to
is
get
the-
awkward, but
This
yeah.
is the same woman that she was a teacher at Regina Cayley Academy, and they had uniforms, and nothing made her happier than wearing humongous clogs every day. And
Okay, do you know why she wore the clogs though, Janet? Yeah, in the chat. She wore the clogs because I wore the clogs to training, and she was like, Erica's wearing clogs. It's back in the
So-
day. Interesting intersection of our lives there.
My
people.
mom and Erica are very good friends. And when I was at Catholic, she wasn't at Catholic Vote yet when we were starting the podcast. She was a part of starting it. And I've never seen my mom more jealous in her entire life. She's like, Erica is probably the favorite person I've ever worked with. So there was an interesting, it was a very interesting experience for me to start working with my mom's favorite coworker all of a sudden. And now we have a podcast. So shout out to my mom. She might be the biggest fan. It's like just probably one of her favorite things to do is just listen to one of her best friends. And then,
Well, and
her
be
son on the
wise here,
podcast.
Tom. You can't cross me or Erica. So
I know. Got the strong followings for both Erica and Josh. So I always toe the line. But my Twilight Zone this week is The Onion. So The Onion, famous for early internet days comedy, definitely has kind of gone off the rails. They were just purchased because they were put up for sale. They were put up for sale because they weren't very funny as a satire site, which is kind of important. And so they were bought by an NBC contributor who purchased it along with executives from Tumblr and TikTok. So for those not paying attention, and if you haven't checked them out, go check them out now. The Babylon Bee is
Ben
one of
Collins
the best
does.
things to happen. So the Babylon Bee was one of the best things to happen to the internet in a while. They are hilarious. There's some of the funniest guys on the internet. They get it. And so, of course, they had to, get in their digs. This is not the Bee, the site that's actually affiliated, but it's all true because sometimes the truth is funnier than anything they could come up with. But I was reading some of the headlines post-purchase from The Onion. The purchase, apparently they didn't have enough money to put up because they didn't hire anyone funnier. So I don't know what the point of buying it was if they're not going to make it funny again. They made a joke about your parents having intercourse on the show Bluey. Swing and a miss on that one. The other headline was Walmart baby registry questionnaire includes checkbox for whether or not pregnancy forced. Swing and miss on that one. And then one was a joke about a technician being a pervert. So they've been really floundering. And I have to say that it's hard to do comedy when you're not willing to criticize things that are actually funny or real. And that's the magic of the Babylon Bee is they were principled to a point of we're going to get banned off Twitter because we're still going to say funny things and criticize the golden calves of the generation. The Onion's the greatest example of we don't have the stones to actually be comedic. We don't have the stones to challenge the golden calves of the day, to poke fun at things that are obviously funny in light of being politically correct or whatever. And it's just so obvious when you read their stuff. And then for a palate cleanser, they added some of their headlines. Headline, Biden dropped support for pro-Palestine protesters after realizing how bad their hair smells. And then the next
didn't
one
pass
was
the sniff test, I guess.
no. And I said, I'm sorry I have to do this, said Christy Noem, pumping shotgun after puppy playfully barks at mailman. And these are just two.
That's
These
funny.
are just two of the headlines right away. 8 handy tricks women can use to beat trans athletes. I mean, these guys are not pulling punches, so they definitely have had their fun with the Onion being bought by someone because they weren't funny, and then they've continued to not be funny. So shout out to the
I mean, that's true. I mean, like what Jerry Seinfeld just made this point. Like, all 4 networks. How many sitcoms were started this fall? Do you know the number?
Oh, 0? 1?
That's right.
Wow.
0. No comedies because the left doesn't know how to do comedy anymore.
They can't make jokes.
They can't
anymore.
do it, and it's like, and then Jerry Seinfeld complained about this, and he said there's even jokes that we couldn't even have done now if we try to do it on our show. And then I think it was some guy from the Guardian was like, "Well, you're not even that funny." You know, it's like, no, Jerry Seinfeld was funny. What are you talking about?
I love how leftist, or not leftist, but left-leaning comedians have become sort of the warriors pushing back on leftism. Like we have Bill Maher, right? We've got Jerry Seinfeld, Francis Foster over in Britain, and they're just saying, look, like we're not even allowed. We're not. They remember when they could make fun of everyone, and now they can't make fun of anyone on the left. And it's just great to see that.
No one's calling Jerry Seinfeld a conservative. I mean,
exactly.
Yeah, I love this.
Didn't he date a 17-year-old at one point?
Yeah, no, I mean, not defending the guy. No.
Yeah.
But
No.
And then when you look at it, but then you've got like, the Guard. You've got Stephen Colbert. You've got Jimmy Fallon,
Jon Stewart.
And then Jimmy Kimmel, and these guys, and Seth Meyers, and like and what was the guy from Saturday Night Live? He actually Colin Yost.
Yeah,
he actually is occasionally funny on Saturday Night Live, and then he gets out there to the nerd prom, what they call it, the White House
Correspondents' Dinner. Oh,
and he gets out there and he's telling these, basically running cover for Biden. It's like, give me a break. This is, I mean, at least you should roast the guy. I mean, like, he's 99 years old or something like that. You can make fun of the corpse right there. But
I think Hillary Clinton might have been in the audience, so you got to be a little careful about what you say. You might be taken out back.
Little Epstein
get the Christy Noam treatment of her puppies. But there was a headline. I saw a headline about that, and it was like, Colin Jost, surprisingly well received at the White House. Well, when you don't criticize everyone, you're going to do pretty well. Like, I'm sure you're going to be pretty happy in the room full of liberal elites.
And then so brave.
The cool anecdote to all of this, and I'd say like probably people my age, one of the most popular comedians right now is Shane Gillis, who is canceled from SNL for like insensitive comments or whatever for being a comedian about races, which of course everyone's so sick of at this point. And so he actually got invited back onto SNL to do a monologue after getting fired from the show a couple of years ago, basically left out in the street. No one wanted to touch him. He started his own comedy show. He actually has his couple Netflix specials. Then he has a show that he did as a sketch is kind of becoming another show and going on Netflix. Anyway, basically the most popular comedian out right now. And he's of the ilk of just like, I'm making fun of everyone. Comedy's going to be comedy. I'm coming from a comedy perspective. He's from like middle America, Pennsylvania. Definitely not conservative. And a lot of his funniest jokes are about his dad watching Fox News or like his cousins having Down syndrome. Like the amount of humanization he's actually done for kids with Down syndrome.
It's awesome.
Way more than all of the liberal people supposedly championing all the intersectionality, whatever. They hate those kids. They think they should be aborted before they're born.
They abort 90% of them, right?
And here we have Shane Gillis talking about how beautiful it is, the funny interactions between them. He has one bit
the only happy people he knows.
Only happy people he knows. And he has a hilarious bit about his one cousin sneaking grilled cheese sandwiches everywhere. Yeah. Like he'll wake up in the middle of the night and make grilled cheese, or like he sneaks them into restaurants and will eat them. It's like, you got grilled cheese, don't you? He's like, no, I don't. He's like, got grilled cheese in his pocket. So yeah, he's got funny stuff. And it's just like, you can actually be funny. Like if you're not beholden to the old guard of protecting everyone's safety.
And before we end, I just want to like make sure that everyone understands that it's not the comics here. It is, no. It's important to see that they're really, oh my gosh, I'm going to stumble over this. They are important in the culture war, and they make things actually happen. So the Babylon Bee, if they had not gotten kicked off of Twitter, that was the impetus for Elon Musk to buy the whole thing, because Elon like loves the Babylon Bee.
Yes.
They get kicked off, and he's like, "Gosh darn it, I want my bee fixed. I'm going to buy Twitter." So these guys, they're not just like they're goofy guys and all that, but they're actually making a cultural difference, and they're our allies.
Oh, it's immensely different. I think
yeah.
comedy is very much misunderstood by a lot of conservatives who think, we're talking about something serious. You shouldn't be laughing. I get that every once in a while. I'm like, oh, yeah, actually, I have an idea for your suggestion. Shut up. And the reason I say that is because they're being stupid. The fact of the matter is, sometimes using comedy to mock people for being absolutely insane is what's required. Like I have relatives who are, rather apolitical or whatever. But what breaks through to them is when someone sees something like comedy or funny. Like they sent me a tweet. Like, I can't believe my sister sending me a tweet from Rudy Giuliani. I mean, that's pretty amazing. And it was Rudy Giuliani. It was this tweet about this woman who's like, they're interviewing her outside New York, NYU. Like, why are you protesting? The person asked him, why are you protesting? Like, what has NYU done? Like, I don't know. I'm just here to help out, to show support for the students from Columbia. And like, you don't even know what they're protesting? She's like, no, I don't.
No.
Turns to the other person, do you know what we're protesting? Like, no, I guess we should know more. Yeah, this is hilarious.
Yeah.
We want to roll the tape on this one?
Roll the tape. This will be a nice Twilight Zone treat.
Support for Palestine and demanding that NYU stops. I honestly don't know all of what NYU's doing.
Is there something that NYU's doing?
I really don't know. I'm pretty sure they're... Do you know what NYU's doing? About Israel. Why are we protesting
masked up,
here?
of course.
Palestine will be free!
I wish I was more educated. I'm not either.
Me too.
I wish you were more educated.
Yeah.
Maybe you should go to college.
It's almost like that's what college is for.
Maybe you should drop out of college and get some real knowledge.
And then cultural shift, not to go on too over past, but I think people previously would have accused conservatives from not being able to take a joke, being joyless, not enjoying comedy. And
They're
has
not
that
wrong.
shifted.
That's the stereotype,
right? But that's completely
true.
changed. Completely changed. Maybe in
Although
the last 10 years.
somewhat
Josh.
not even fair, though.
Right, but not even fair. But that would have been, I think, the cultural consensus was like people on the right can't take a joke. And now, 100%, it's all the left. Post the PC revolution, liberals cannot take a joke. They literally can't. They can't make anything funny because they can't offend anyone. They can't offend special groups. They can't punch down, quote unquote. That's the big thing Seinfeld got talked about. It's like you can't punch down.
Yeah.
It's like, so okay,
Yes,
well, you're inherently admitting that someone's below you by saying punch down.
Right.
Especially if you're talking about a certain race. So, like, who's the real racist here? The people punching down or the people acknowledging that one race is
I thought
below
we're all
another
equal.
race?
We could just
what
crack
are we
jokes,
doing here? Yeah,
call me cracker, whatever. Let's have fun. But it's
watch
also...
All right, we got to shut this down, dude.
Yeah.
We got to shut this down before we get too crazy. Loopcast After Dark.
Lunchtime.
It's lunchtime. We got to roll here. So, all right. So, great episode today. If you guys want to help us out, like the episode. Share us around. Subscribe on YouTube. That's huge for us. Rate the show. We're almost at 500 reviews on Apple Podcasts. That's pretty cool. If you guys want to get us 500, head over there. 5 stars, if you please. Spotify as well. If you want to contact me, loopcast@catholicvote.org. If you want to support the show, become a champion. That helps us out the most of everything you could do. Loopcast.org is where you can do that. And we appreciate you guys. Happy St. Joseph the Worker Day. St. Thomas More, St. Fidelis, Our Lady of Guadalupe. Pray for us. And we'll see you guys on Friday. Peace.